Hello everybody, welcome back to the 13th episode of the Sporting Fix today. I hope you've had a great break and good to be back to it also. So we'll just be concentrating on the cricket this week and the World Cup and everything for that. Obviously Australia are qualified along with India, South Africa and New Zealand. Australia finishing third, so they're going to be taking on South Africa straight away this week, so it's going to be an interesting, very entertaining, hopefully, and positive outcome for Australia on the Thursday, the 16th. But before we get to that, I just want to, dive into how Australia have gotten here and the games that we need to analyse that were the most important for them to get to this position. So we're going to focus, obviously, it was a terrible start for them. It was a terrible start. They lost both the first two of their games, which was not great. Right, it was India, it was South Africa, and obviously they were big losses because they lost to South Africa by 134 runs. They lost to India by 6 wickets. So it wasn't a good start for the Aussies in this tournament. But then they've picked up the pace and they've won 7 in a row. So they're on a good stint of runs to start off with as they head into the semi-final. But the main games I want to focus on, and yes, I've analysed all the games, but the main ones that were so important for Australia were these ones that I'm about to go through with you. So it's going to be a few games that were crucial, right? And I believe that this game that was almost up there with the most crucial was the win against Sri Lanka. And yep, you're probably thinking, okay, how? Because Sri Lanka aren't a good team. But it's because they were in such a bad position, Australia. They were in such a bad position, they had to get the win on the board to give themselves confidence, to give themselves a chance to flourish in this competition. They beat Sri Lanka, and it was off the back of an Adam Zampa and Cummins, fire that they lit in the game, because otherwise they were going to lose. So they ended up beating Sri Lanka by 5 wickets. This is dating all the way back at the start of the tournament, and it was so crucial. Right, so they versed them on the 16th of October, and it was so crucial that they got this win, and they did get it. And then from there, it was all smokes and whistles. A massive game that they won was against New Zealand. It was a genuine thriller, high scoring. New Zealand were the ones to beat at the time, and they beat them, and that's a big win because they've lost to Sri Lanka and India, but they've beaten New Zealand. So if we go to that game where they did verse New Zealand and Travis Head came back and scored 109, it was just a slogfest to start off with. If you can date your minds back to that game, it was just so good to watch, and they ended up getting the cookies. But because of this, because of everything they've done since the first two games where they did lose, it's been unbelievable. So I feel like the confidence that they have and everything that they can possess to go into this semi-final is going to be crucial. And I feel like they have enough. They have the skill. They have the team with Travis Head back, Marsh back, Smith back, because there were some mishaps and crucial players missing a couple of games. But if they're all back, which they are, for the semi-final, they can beat any team on any given day. So if we do preview this game, South Africa and Australia, you'll see that Quinton de Kock is the man for South Africa that produces the runs. He's second overall in the runs with 591. And he's only getting better by age. It seems like every time he goes out to the crease, he scores runs. And, he's the one to look out for in terms of when you're bowling to South Africa. But in return, they have some damaging bowlers. The likes of Marco Jansen, Coetzee, Maharaj as well. So they've got crucial players, and obviously you'd expect that considering they did make the top 4. But Australia have crucial players as well. And these crucial players I feel like Australia have more of. Because you've got Warner on 499 runs. Mitch Marsh is in form. Maxwell's in form with a bat. And when you've got a squad like Australia has, that their batting depth is just so deep. It goes so deep. So they've got Warner, they've got Inglis, Stoinis, Marnus, they've got Mitch Marsh, Steve Smith, Travis Head. It just goes on. So anyone who versus Australia, when they bowl to them, they're going to have a hard time. So Australia have to make the most of when they do bat. And I feel like batting first is the right option because, we've seen it where they've bowled first and it's probably not as flowing and as damaging as Australia would have liked. So the thing that they need to do is they need to win the toss and they need to bat because they play better when they bat first because more often than not, they score big runs, puts less pressure on the bowlers, and the bowlers can do their job from there. However, that's a lot of the time it's not the case because we decide to bowl first, which isn't the right option in my eyes at least. So it's interesting because obviously Australia and South Africa, they're the top two teams in terms of team ranking with runs. So South Africa as a team have scored the most runs in the tournament, and Australia has scored the second most in the tournament. So it's going to be, as we'd expect, it's going to be a run fest. It's going to be high scoring, and it's going to be hopefully Australia's victory in the end. And then if we go to all the, the mishaps and I guess the disadvantages and bad plays that have occurred in the two teams, they're in the middle, right? So South Africa are fourth in terms of dropped catches, and Australia are sixth in terms of dropped catches. So there's not really a lot there. It's more the runs that we like to focus on at the moment. So it's going to be a slog fest. We know that, and that's good to watch. It's really good to watch. And we've gone through Australia's run and their form so far. We go to South Africa's. They versed Afghanistan. They won by 5 wickets. They versed India and they lose by 243. And this is the match that I want to focus on in terms of a South Africa perspective. Virat Kohli scored 101. And India as a whole scored 326. So, it's a solid score. You always want to get over 300 in terms of a batting side, and they did that. But in return, South Africa they got rolled for 83. And yep, it's probably once in a blue moon that this does happen. But it's not great because it is deep into this tournament where you need to be in form heading into semi-finals, and they haven't done that so far. It'll still be in the back of their mind the way that they've performed because they verse India and they get rolled for 83, and then they verse Afghanistan and they only win by about 5 wickets, which is a solid win, but it is Afghanistan. You'd expect them to win, but there's still that voice in the back of their head saying we need to perform or else we will get rolled for 83 like they did against India. So South Africa and Australia, it's going to be a massive match. Who do I think will win? I feel like I have to go with me gut. I feel like Australia will win. They've got Zampa in form. They've got, Marsh in form. Warner's in form. Travis Head, you could almost say, is in form. Everyone seems to be in form apart from Mitchell Starc. But he's so damaging. We know what he can do with the kookaburra. So he's hopefully going to get back into the wickets and really showing everyone what he's capable of. So India and New Zealand we will now go to. It's first, fourth. Obviously, India, they haven't lost a game this whole tournament. They are the team to beat. They're in India. They've got the fans. They've got the ground. They've got the wins. They've got everything in their favour. So they're in the box seat to win this tournament. But it just takes, pressure. Like pressure in the big games that makes a team crumble. India, they're so dynamic. They can change. They can adapt to any situation that occurs. And I just feel like, it's only going to get better for them. However, if a miracle does happen and they do lose to New Zealand, that will be ideal for Australia. Obviously, the last team you'd want to verse in a final is India, but you never know what will happen tonight. And it's gonna be a very close game, hopefully, and hopefully see the Kiwis get up on top. But if we do have a look at these two teams, so just say India do make it through, obviously the main batter to look out for is King Kohli. He's 30. He's as old as the hills, this bloke, right? So he's 35 years old, and he's scored 594 runs this tournament. So he's still hitting his straps. 35 years of old. 35 years age. His age is 35 years old. He's tearing this game to shreds. He still is. And if we go to the wickets, you've got Jasprit Bumrah, Mohammad Shami, Ravindra Jadeja, Kuldeep Yadav. Like, their whole team is perfect. And when you've got 38 million, billion, however many damn people there are in the country, you'd expect that to happen. So, India, they are the team to beat. Hopefully they do lose in terms of Australia. If India do lose, Australia win in the World Cup. It's as simple as that. If Australia end up going to the final and India are not there, they're winning. They're holding that trophy. It's a different story, though, if India do beat New Zealand. If India beat New Zealand, then I have a feeling Kohli and his men are going to be holding that trophy up. I just cannot see any team beating them at the moment. They're on top of their game. They are taking it to every team. They're producing everything they need to produce in order to win. So it's one to look out for. These last few games, it is just, you have to keep your eyes on the page. I'll certainly be staying up all night to watch Australia play. I'll be staying up all night to watch the final. Hopefully Australia will be there. Hopefully Australia will win. So that's pretty much it. Australia, in my eyes, in my point of view, they're going to beat South Africa. What I want to happen is New Zealand to beat India, but I don't think it'll happen. So at the end of the day, using logic, using IQ, using everything, you need to form a decision. It's going to be Australia and India in the final. I hate to say it, but I'm going to say it because you have to be knowledgeable. You can't just be pulling rabbits out of your hat and pulling stuff out of your ass. India are going to beat Australia. And I feel this depth, I don't know, of... it's hard to explain, isn't it? It hurts for me to say this, but Australia are not going to win the World Cup if India are there. I just don't like the chances. And I don't want to dwell on this because it's not happened yet. They could easily lose to New Zealand. I just don't like saying India are going to beat Australia in the World Cup. If it does happen, I'll jump off a bridge onto a trampoline, so I will live. No. If Australia lose to any team, Australia, there's times where they just make you want to kickstart a flippin' landmine. Hopefully it doesn't happen in the finals. They've got to hold their pressure. They've got to put pressure on the opposition and capitalise. They do that, they win. They have the team to beat India. And I don't want to sound like a psychologist, but it's about the mental game as well. It's so crucial to have that, the mental win over a team. You're out in 35-degree heat. You bat first. Stephen Smith, Pat Cummins, you bat first. You do not waste your energy on a 35-degree road where you're not going to get wickets. You bat first, you put runs on the board, you capitalise with the pill under the lights. You do that, game over, see you later. Off to the sheds, drink some piss. You've got a trophy in your mitts, and you'll do it all again in 4 years' time. Hopefully it's Australia, hopefully it's not India. Thank you very much for that spiel. So, cricket done, a little bit of footy. Boys are back at pre-season now. Very early, obviously. It is the AFL. You'd expect that to do so. But it's the draft coming up the end of this month. I'm pumped. I'm pumped to see what West Coast are going to pick with their pick one. Am I saying they're gonna pick Dan Curtin? I don't know. Am I gonna say they're gonna pick Harley Reid? In my eyes, with all the theory that I've done and all the pus that I've had to endure, the right option is to choose Dan Curtin. The logical option is to choose Harley Reid. Dan Curtin's from WA. If you want a person to stay at a club, you need the person to have family at the town you're playing in. So he's from Perth. He's going to play in Perth, Dan Curtin. However, West Coast don't need a defender. What they need is some powerful midfielder like Harley Reid who can hit the scoreboard. I think they're going to go with Harley. But I feel like, Dan Curtin, it just sounds so good, doesn't it? Dan Curtin at West Coast. He's from there and he plays there. It would just fit perfectly for Dan Curtin. Obviously, West Coast have their own needs and they have their own problems, and there's a fair few of them. Obviously, one player isn't going to fix it all, but it'll do a good job of trying to bond the team together. I just feel like I want West Coast to pick Harley Reid in terms of if they want to succeed better, because they don't need a defender, as I said. They've got Barras, they've got Hearn, they've got McGovern, they've got, they've got players. They need a powerful midfielder. All I've got in the midfield is Kelly. Right? Andrew Gaff is old. They're all going to retire. Imagine having Tim Kelly and Harley Reid. That would be so good. So good for West Coast. Hopefully they pick Harley Reid. And that would then mean 100%, I could almost bet my life on it, that North would pick Dan Curtin because they need a defender. They are clutching at straws to find a defender. They've picked a bloke, Toby Pink, from Adelaide to fill in that Ben Mackay spot. So they need to use their pick 2 on Dan Curtin. And then they'd have a little bit of a half-respectful back line. But North, they hold all the cards. North Melbourne hold all the cards in terms of, I guess, picks. They have all the power, you could say. They have all the power because they have pick 2, which obviously, whatever West Coast don't pick, so if West Coast pick Dan Curtin, North will take Harley Reid. If West Coast pick Harley Reid, North will take Dan Curtin. We know it's going to happen that way. They've got pick 2, they've got pick 3, they've got pick 15, they've got pick 17 and 18. Tell me a better way, a better situation North could be in. If they stuff this up, it will be probably one of the biggest embarrassments the league has ever seen. I don't think they can stuff it up. You could have brainless Barry behind the computer and he'd still do a good job with all those picks. I feel like they'll do good. North and Hawthorn are going to flip the league upside down next year. They're going to shock a lot of people in my eyes. They're going to surprise people. They're going to win more games. They won't make finals, but they'll be bloody close. That's my stint on things. West Coast, how are they going to go? They're not going to go too great. They still need a couple of years to rebuild. And then they'll be back. News out of the Gold Coast. Obviously, Dimmer's getting Alex Rance. So there's a little bit going around, but it's sort of, I guess, been at a steady pace right now. There hasn't been a lot of news, obviously, because we're heading into pre-season, and then there'll be the draft, and there'll be bombs and loads and all sorts of pus going everywhere because of the draft. There'll be so many picks. But at the moment, it's just the calm before the storm, before everything just explodes, really. So that's it really in terms of footy and cricket. Obviously, over this summer, there won't be as many episodes because there's not as many sport happening. We'd still get the odd guest in here and there just to talk about a sport and news around that and topics and everything, just to, clump up that time and hopefully provide some nice insight from not only me, but just a couple of other people as well. It's not going to be every week. It might be every fortnight or every 3 or 4 weeks. We'll soon we'll keep you posted and things will go from there. But until footy season starts, it'll be a little bit slower. The test matches will come. I'll talk about that. But then footy season comes back and I'll be all over it like a cheap suit. So thank you, everybody. Shorter episode today. Make sure you watch the ODI World Cup. Make sure you watch Australia. Cheer on them bloody Aussies. Hopefully they hold the trophy. Tune in for the draft. Make your own decisions. I hope you have a good night. I'll see you sometime.